Welcome to my latest podcast series, One Life. My name's Terence Wallace, and I'm the writer and publisher of a weekly essay entitled Indelible Adventures, and I'm your host. This podcast series sets out to prompt and challenge your thinking about life and what it means to really live your life. I'll share with you my insights and personal experiences with the sole objective of getting you to reflect and think about your approach to living your best life. So let's get started. This week's episode is entitled Simplify and Adapt. I think we all crave a simple life, one less stressful and complicated, which for the most part would be the ideal situation. But like most things in life, there are many ebbs and flows, and so not always as simple as first thought. Quite often our lives are more complicated than normal due to situations outside of our control. However, what I find interesting is our ability to cope and to readjust the rhythm of our lives to accommodate these changes. Sometimes we find ourselves resisting, which only adds greater stress both for us and all those around us. For me personally, it took quite some time to understand that it's better to surrender, even though it's stressful at the time. Then determine the best way to adapt, but to always move forward. Perhaps that's just maturity, because what I've found is that the longer I resisted, the more and greater I was stressed. Learning to understand myself and be able to see and interpret situations didn't always come easy for me, likely due to my impatient nature. As I reflect on my life, the greatest period of adaptation for me personally was when Zach and Sam were born. And I know that I'm not alone in this. Now let's face it, up until the birth of your first child, we're relatively footloose and carefree. However, the realization that there is no user manual for this wriggly little pink bundle of joy was absolutely mind-boggling and scary, all at the same time. As you can imagine, there's a distinct settling in period for both when you have each child. The smell of newborn baby is absolute heaven. However, those poop explosions, well, not so much. My first major moment of adaptation came when Zach was 5 months old. My ex was then posted to Chicago for a year for work, and so I became Mr. Mum Monday to Friday. Now, fortunately, I wasn't alone. We had a great nanny, Leia, and she was the best ever, by the way. And so she would come over at 7 o'clock in the morning and care for Zach during the day. Then I'd be home at night at 5 o'clock to take over. Now, it wasn't long before we were able to get into a very solid routine. I absolutely adored the undivided one-on-one time I had with Zach. I was lucky as he took his first steps and said his first words with me. We even forged a boys' night out routine. He and I would go to the local burger joint, Licks, at Yonge and Eglinton in Toronto, every Wednesday night, and I'd order him a hot dog and cut it into very tiny pieces so he could eat it, along with munching on a fry or two. When Sam came along, our Wednesday nights morphed into the Three Amigos night out. The best part is that we were able to continue this routine until they were 7 and 5 respectively. It was at this point in my life I changed careers and moved to a global management consulting firm. With my new job came my first posting to Dallas, Texas, where I worked for a year. After that, it was on to Washington, D.C. for a year, before being posted to Vancouver in British Columbia for 3.5 years. As with all my management consulting postings, I'd fly first thing Monday morning and then fly home late Thursday night or Friday morning. This time also became a time of significant adaptation, as I'd have to try and squeeze in as much time as I could with Zach and Sam into 2 days. However, once my dad got sick in Australia, I was able to take a role that allowed me to work remotely from anywhere in the world. So then my schedule changed once again, so I could work from Australia 3 weeks per month while I cared for him, and then 1 week back in Toronto. This was a grueling schedule to say the least. I always found myself somewhere on a plane, and never home spending time with my family. Life was complicated and stressful for us all. After my dad passed away and my marriage dissolved, which were less than a year apart, I knew that I had to simplify my life and become the parent I knew I always could be. More importantly, I also needed to be present and engaged. Having the kids half-time meant that I wasn't able to travel for work, which effectively put an end to my management consulting career, as they had no use for me locally. It had been a great experience, but my kids were my first priority, so it became an easy decision to leave. This single change simplified my life considerably. By this stage, Zach was now 13 and entering his teen years, while Sam was an active 11-year-old preteen. After my separation, my ex and I forged an incredibly supportive and strong co-parenting approach with the kids while remaining friends. The best sign was that after the initial adjustment period, they both continued to thrive. The lesson I took from this is that we can uncomplicate our lives, but we have to have the courage and willingness to step up and make the changes required. Ultimately, we control our lives, not the circumstances and situations that we find ourselves in, although it's sometimes difficult to see the forest for the trees. It often takes someone outside looking in to help us see the options we have available, whether it be your spouse, friend, mentor, or counselor. The reality is that sometimes we're just too close and emotionally invested to have a clear view of what's in front of us. And from experience, I would always recommend that you use an impartial friend or confidant to give you guidance and support when you're feeling stuck. At the end of the day, there are always options. Although some may feel unpalatable initially and others impossibly hard, but ultimately we all have choices. Over the ensuing years, I've taken these lessons and applied them more broadly to my life, trying to untangle and declutter the complexity of my life and simplify where possible. Take a moment to think about how you might simplify, or perhaps celebrate how you've simplified and adapted your life over the years. The concept of simplifying and adapting your life is a mindset change. If you'd like to learn more about Indelible Adventures and the products and services we provide, please take a moment to visit the website at www.indelibleadventures.com. Indelible Adventures is one word. Thanks for listening, and look forward to hosting you again very soon.